Hey folks, Garrett Fisher here. I need to tell you about this absolutely mind-blowing podcast, Acting President, that's been keeping me up at night. It's about James Bennett, a former governor starring in a hit Sunday night TV show about overthrowing the government, and then his actual former chief of staff approaches him to do it for real. The line between fiction and reality completely disappears when these course correction rallies start popping up everywhere. Is it brilliant marketing or something more sinister? The parallels are insane. Trust me, this is the political thriller you didn't know you needed in your life. Acting President, available now wherever you find podcasts.
Calaroga Shark Media.
From Washington, D.C., where we ended the Ukraine war on day one, this is Ballot.
That's right, and Mexico paid for that wall. Let's hit this. President Trump is apparently having a rough week with his peace negotiation skills, and Vladimir Putin is not making it any easier. Trump posted on Truth Social that Putin is playing with fire, and suggested that if it weren't for him, lots of really bad things would have already happened to Russia. And I mean really bad. That's quite a shift from last week when Trump was gushing about his good conversation with a nice gentleman named Vladimir Putin. Apparently, Putin went from nice gentleman to playing with fire faster than a relationship status update on Facebook. The whole situation is giving off serious mixed signals energy. Trump spent years talking about his close relationship with Putin, describing their trust and downplaying Russian aggression. Now he's frustrated that Putin won't come to the bargaining table after Trump demanded an immediate ceasefire. Shocking development. The guy who invaded another country isn't eager to negotiate. Trump famously promised to end the war in Ukraine within 24 hours, though he later admitted he was being a little bit sarcastic. That's political speak for I made a ridiculous promise and now I'm stuck with it. It's the diplomatic equivalent of saying you'll clean your room in a minute and then never doing it. What's particularly entertaining is that Trump has been threatening sanctions against Russia, which is a complete reversal from his previous approach. This is the same guy who exempted Russia from tariffs that he imposed on most of the rest of the world. Now he's considering economic punishment because Putin won't play nice. That's like giving your friends special treatment and then getting mad when they don't return the favor. Secretary of State Marco Rubio warned that threatening sanctions might make Russia stop talking, which seems to miss the point that Russia isn't really talking anyway. That's like worrying that your silent treatment will make someone ignore you even more. Experts are pointing out that there's plenty of room to tighten sanctions on Russia. Edward Fishman, who helped design Russia sanctions during the Obama administration, said there's quite a bit of low-hanging fruit when it comes to targeting Russian banks and companies. Apparently, we've been going easy on them this whole time, which explains why Putin feels comfortable continuing his invasion. The State and Treasury departments have been drafting potential sanctions packages, but everything depends on Trump's personal preference. So basically, the fate of Ukrainian military aid and Russian economic pressure comes down to whatever mood the president is in on any given day. That's reassuring foreign policy leadership right there. Former Ambassador William Taylor pointed out that Putin doesn't take Trump's frustrated statements seriously because there's been zero actual pushback. All these angry Truth Social posts have had about as much impact as shouting at your television during a football game. Putin is basically calling Trump's bluff, and so far, it's working. The whole thing highlights Trump's negotiating strategy, which apparently involves being friendly first and then getting mad when that doesn't work. It's the international relations version of asking nicely for something and then threatening to tell mom when you don't get your way. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. just announced that his agency is no longer recommending COVID vaccines for healthy pregnant women and healthy children. And yes, that's the same RFK Jr. who once called the COVID vaccine the deadliest vaccine ever made. So this is either a major policy shift or Tuesday. Kennedy posted a 58-second video on social media because apparently that's how we announce major public health decisions now. Gone are the days of press conferences and detailed explanations. Now we get health policy via TikTok-length videos. What's next, announcing cancer treatments through Instagram stories? The best part? CDC officials weren't even told about this decision beforehand. That's the government equivalent of your boss announcing your resignation without asking you first. Surprise! We've decided you don't recommend things anymore. Hope that's cool with you? Kennedy was flanked in the video by FDA Commissioner Marty Makary and NIH head Jay Bhattacharya, who stood there nodding along. They looked like backup dancers in a very confusing music video about public health policy. Now, this creates what experts are calling a legal gray area around insurance coverage. Translation: good luck figuring out if your insurance will pay for these vaccines now. Insurance companies love nothing more than a vague policy change that gives them an excuse to deny coverage. They're probably celebrating this announcement harder than Kennedy's anti-vaccine supporters. The timing is particularly interesting since the CDC estimates that only 13% of eligible children and 14% of eligible pregnant women got the latest COVID vaccine anyway. So Kennedy is basically removing a recommendation that most people were already ignoring. That's like banning something that nobody was buying in the first place. And here's the kicker. When Kennedy was asked at a congressional hearing whether he'd vaccinate his own children against measles, he said, "I don't think people should be taking medical advice from me."
What happens when one of the most powerful men in music is accused of some of the most serious crimes imaginable? Check out the new podcast, Did He Do It? Following the federal sex crimes trial of Sean Diddy Combs, coming to you straight from New York City. Every day I'll take you inside the courtroom where prosecutors say Combs ran a criminal enterprise of sex trafficking, coercion, and abuse, using his fame, fortune, and influence to silence victims and control lives. We'll cover the big stories and the small moments that can shift the verdict. The trial has begun. The questions are piling up, and every day we'll be asking the same thing. Did he do it? Follow now wherever you get your podcasts.
Tired of doom scrolling? Want news that won't make you want to live in a bunker? Check out 5 Good News Stories, where they find the silver lining in a world that's usually lined with something much less pleasant. The gang at 5 Good News Stories dig through the headlines to find 5 stories that prove humanity hasn't completely lost its mind. It's pretty much the opposite of this show. From scientific breakthroughs nobody's talking about to random acts of kindness that restore your faith in humanity, all delivered with the cutting wit you deserve. 5 Good News Stories, because sometimes the news doesn't have to suck. Subscribe to 5 Good News Stories wherever you get your podcasts. French President Emmanuel Macron and his wife Brigitte just provided the internet with its latest viral moment, and it wasn't exactly the diplomatic content you'd expect from a state visit to Vietnam. A 2-second video clip shows Brigitte Macron appearing to slap or shove her husband in the face as they emerge from their presidential jet in Hanoi. Macron recoiled with what can only be described as the universal expression of "did that just happen?" before quickly recovering to wave at the cameras like nothing occurred. The Elysee Palace's initial response was to claim the video was AI generated, which is the 2025 equivalent of "my dog ate my homework." When that didn't work, they pivoted to calling it a moment of togetherness and suggested the couple was just joking around after their 16-hour flight. Because nothing says marital affection like a public face slap at an international airport. French officials blamed pro-Russian accounts for spreading negative comments about the incident, which seems like a stretch. Pretty sure you don't need foreign interference to recognize awkward body language when you see it. That's just basic human observation skills. The whole situation gets more uncomfortable when you remember that Brigitte met Emmanuel when he was 15 and she was his 40-year-old drama teacher. She was married with 3 children at the time, one of whom was actually Emmanuel's classmate. So this relationship has been generating awkward conversations since before social media existed. Brigitte has described being in a relationship with such a young boy as crippling, which is an interesting word choice. She also admitted that turning 70 was particularly difficult, saying, "Obviously, it's easier to be in the same age range." That's the understatement of the century right there. What makes this even more bizarre is that the Macrons don't exactly fly economy. Their presidential jet has a king-size bed, bathroom, dressing room, and cordon bleu trained chefs. If you're going to have a marital spat, at least they're doing it in style. Paris sources describe Brigitte as organizing everything for the president, from his diary to his clothes, and say it's not unusual for her to scold him if he's doing something wrong. That's less First Lady and more Mom making sure you remembered your lunch money. Portions of today's show were made with the help of RFK AI and Russian bots.
You know the silhouette, the squint, the voice that cuts like a blade. Clint Eastwood isn't just a movie star, he's a myth, a mayor, a cultural fault line, and maybe the last great American icon. Eastwood Reloaded tells his story one chapter at a time. The hits, the flops, the chaos between the scenes. Because legends aren't born, they're built. Eastwood Reloaded. Listen now wherever you get your podcasts.
In Washington, D.C., power flows through information. But what happens when the most sensitive military intelligence in the world ends up on the wrong phone? In the halls of power, a national security advisor makes a fatal miscalculation. On the other side of the world, a special forces team walks into a perfectly orchestrated trap. When the dust settles, 4 American soldiers are dead, 3 more captured. And the most catastrophic intelligence breach in modern history is just beginning to unravel. Signal Lost, a 6-part podcast thriller about betrayal, courage, and the devastating consequences of a world where even our most guarded communications are never truly secure. When everyone is listening, nowhere is safe. Signal Lost. Available wherever you get your podcasts.